It was 10 years ago when I first met her. I was 28, just starting to feel like I had a real footing in my career. She was 26, magnetic in a way that made everyone else seem slightly faded. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party, one of those awkward gatherings where you know maybe 3 people and spend most of the night pretending to text someone just to avoid weird conversations. She walked in wearing a mustard yellow coat, laughing at something the bartender said, and I remember thinking, who laughs like that in a room full of strangers? It wasn't just the sound of it, but the way it made people look at her. Not because she was loud, but because she made things feel lighter. She introduced herself to me without hesitation, and somehow, in the middle of a crowded bar with terrible lighting and even worse music, we ended up talking for hours. I forgot to text anyone back that night. We started dating a week later. Everything just kind of flowed, no awkward phases, no games. She loved old movies, hated olives, and had this tradition of writing letters to herself every New Year's Eve. I liked that about her. It made her seem grounded, like someone who was always thinking a little deeper than she let on. 2 years in, we got married. Small wedding. Just family and a few close friends. No dramatic speeches, no fireworks. Just us, under a canopy of lights, promising each other things we thought we understood. We moved into a cozy 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. Not too far from the city, but quiet enough that you could hear the birds in the morning. The kind of place you buy because you think about having a dog. Maybe kids someday. Our life together has been pretty steady. She's now a creative director at a boutique marketing firm, one of those people who somehow makes deadlines and chaos look like part of the plan. I work in IT, mostly remote, which means I'm the guy doing laundry between Zoom meetings and reheating coffee 3 times a day. Our rhythms don't always align, but we make time for each other. Friday nights are usually takeout and a movie. Sundays are for coffee runs and grocery shopping, nothing glamorous, but somehow that's always been enough for me. We've built a comfortable life. A nice car, a few weekend getaways every year, dinners with friends, the occasional spontaneous road trip. There's a familiarity to it all now. The kind of routine that feels like home. Our days settled into a rhythm that felt both effortless and intentional. Alyssa was always up before me, even on weekends. She liked her mornings quiet, tea, not coffee, her tablet on the kitchen counter, flipping through design blogs or reading half a novel before I even managed to brush my teeth. She always left the kettle warm for me, though. It's a small thing, but I noticed it. Our home isn't huge, but it's ours. White walls, lightwood floors, shelves filled with books, and little artifacts from trips we've taken together. There's a framed photo of us in Lisbon that always catches my eye. I'm squinting from the sun, and she's mid-laugh, one hand in her hair. That photo says more about our relationship than any words ever could. We're not flashy people. We don't throw big parties or chase trends. We prefer slow weekends, farmers markets, trying out new recipes, or just laying around binge-watching whatever series she's into that month. I tend to be the calmer one, and she's the creative burst of energy. She'll decide out of nowhere that we should repaint a room or rearrange the furniture, and I'll grumble about it right before I get up and help her move the couch. Alyssa is the kind of woman who doesn't just walk into a room, she fills it. People are drawn to her. It used to make me nervous early on, but it's just who she is. She listens well, talks with her hands, and always seems to know the right thing to say, even when I don't. She's the one who remembers birthdays, plans our travel itineraries, and keeps our fridge stocked with oat milk because I said once that I preferred it in my coffee. We don't fight often. When we do, it's over little things, me forgetting to rinse the dishes, her leaving laundry halfway through folding. But we talk things out. That's something we've always been good at, communication. At least, that's what I believed. She tells me everything about her work, her team, her deadlines, the weird emails her boss sends, and I tell her about mine, even if it's just some mild office politics or a glitch I fixed that no one but me noticed. There's a sort of ease between us that I never really questioned. She makes dinner most nights, but I do the dishes. I'm the one who drives when we go out of town, but she's the one who books the Airbnb and packs the snacks. We operate like a team. We have date nights, nothing extravagant, just dinners out or the occasional movie. Sometimes we go to this little jazz bar she loves, and she'll sip her wine and tap her fingers to the music like she's somewhere else entirely. Watching her in those moments always reminded me why I fell in love with her. We have our rituals, a shared Spotify playlist that we update constantly, notes on the fridge when one of us leaves early, monthly wine subscriptions we pretend are for tasting, but mostly just drink on the couch while talking about how we'll finally fix the backyard this summer. Looking back, it all felt solid, familiar, intimate, even in its ordinariness. Like we had built something real, something that could stand the test of time. If you asked me what our marriage looked like from the outside, I'd say it probably seemed almost boring. But to me, that routine, those quiet, shared moments, was everything. Not the kind of passionate romance people post about on social media, but something deeper. Consistency, a sense of belonging. We knew each other so well, we could have full conversations with just a glance. I used to think that kind of familiarity was rare. Alyssa always had a flair for aesthetics. Our house reflected that. Plants in every room, framed vintage posters from cities we'd visited. The furniture always just mismatched enough to look intentional. She said she liked creating a space that felt like a reflection of us. I went along with her choices for the most part. I liked seeing her excited about something, even if it was just a new rug or a thrifted lamp. We each had our little corners of independence too. She had her studio room, technically the spare bedroom, where she kept her drawing supplies, work boards, and mood lighting. I had the garage, which I'd slowly turned into a mini gym and workspace over the years. We didn't spend every waking moment together, but when we did, it felt natural, comfortable. On weekday mornings, we usually crossed paths in the kitchen, me in pajama pants scrambling eggs, her dressed and ready, typing something out on her phone with one hand and holding a smoothie in the other. She always kissed me on the cheek before leaving, without fail. It was the kind of small, repeated gesture that made me believe we were doing just fine. Weeknights were quieter. Sometimes we'd cook together, music playing low in the background. She'd tell me about her latest pitch or how one of her team members needed coaching. I'd tell her how someone at work accidentally deleted a database, and we'd laugh about how calm I sounded about it. That was always our dynamic. Her with the stories, me with the commentary. We complemented each other. We made time for friends too. Double dates, group hikes, birthday dinners. People often told us we seemed like a well-matched couple. Alyssa had this way of lighting up a room, and I was fine hanging back, nursing a beer and nodding along while she carried the conversation. I think we both liked it that way. Vacations were something we really looked forward to. Even if it was just a long weekend trip, she planned every detail meticulously. I handled the logistics, car rentals, confirmations, backup chargers. She brought the spontaneity, detours to random roadside attractions, last-minute wine tastings, the let's just keep walking and see what we find approach. We rarely traveled without at least one memorable misadventure, and that was part of the charm. And yeah, we weren't perfect. There were stressors. Work was demanding, and the conversation about kids had kind of faded into the background after a while. But I didn't think that was unusual. Plenty of couples found a rhythm that didn't include children. We'd talk about adopting a dog now and then, but it never turned into action. Life just felt stable. Looking back, I didn't think there was anything missing. Maybe that's the part that gets me now. Because if you had asked me then, before everything, I would have said without hesitation that I was happy, content, certain. I believed we were both in this together, building a life, choosing each other every single day. I had no idea what was coming. It started with what seemed like a harmless question. We were having dinner, just the two of us, like most nights, sitting across from each other, half-finished wine glasses on the table, a Spotify playlist murmuring in the background. Alyssa had made pasta, something she knew I liked after a long day, and the conversation had been light, until it wasn't. She asked, "Have you ever thought about opening the relationship?" I froze. I laughed at first. I thought she was joking. But when I looked up and saw her face, calm, serious, almost clinical, I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I set down my fork. "What?" I asked, even though I'd heard her perfectly. I mean, not necessarily anything drastic. Just maybe giving each other space to explore. It's something a lot of couples are doing now, especially long-term ones. She said it so matter-of-factly, like she was asking if I wanted to try a new workout class. There was no hint of guilt in her voice. Just curiosity, like she'd thought this through. I blinked at her, trying to read between the lines. "Is this something you've been thinking about for a while?" She shrugged, took a sip of wine. "I've just been reading about it, listening to a few podcasts. It's not that I'm unhappy or anything. I just think we could be more honest about our needs. Maybe we've grown past traditional definitions." I sat back in my chair. My stomach turned. "So you want to sleep with other people?" Her jaw tightened, but she kept her tone level. That's not what I'm saying. Not exactly. I'm saying maybe we can redefine what this relationship looks like. Let it evolve. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her. I just looked at her and said, no, that's not something I want. Her face hardened just slightly. Okay. I just wanted to have an open conversation. But that night, something shifted. She kissed me goodnight, but it felt off. Like someone pressing a key too hard on a piano, still the right note, but it sounded wrong. Over the next few weeks, things changed in ways I couldn't quite name. Subtle things. She stayed out later. She was glued to her phone more often. She was warmer in conversation, oddly attentive. Almost like she was overcompensating. But she'd mentioned the open relationship only once more, in passing, like it hadn't been a big deal. Like it hadn't shaken me. Then there were the evenings she came home with that strange energy, restless, glowing in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. She'd hum to herself while putting away groceries or hop in the shower without saying a word. She stopped initiating anything physical, but insisted she was just tired from work. I tried to shake it off. Told myself I was being paranoid. That I'd made my boundaries clear and she'd accepted them. But deep down, I think I knew. I just didn't want to admit it. Not yet. The thing about suspicion is that it rarely announces itself with fanfare. It creeps in quietly, settles into the background of your life like a flickering light you can't quite fix. That's what it felt like in the weeks after Alyssa brought up the idea of an open relationship. I kept telling myself we were fine, that maybe I was just overanalyzing everything. But there was this low hum in my chest that wouldn't go away. It started with the small stuff, her schedule shifting ever so slightly. She was always busy, always just getting back from something. A quick drink with coworkers, a networking event, late client meetings. All of it sounded reasonable on paper, and she said it with that same breezy confidence she always had. But it was the way she said it, like she was reciting lines she'd memorized. I didn't question her directly. I didn't want to seem controlling or paranoid. But I started noticing details. She used to tell me everything, even the mundane stuff, who said what in a meeting, which client was being a nightmare. Lately, she kept things vague. Work's just crazy right now. It was just a lot today. Then she'd change the subject or ask me about my day, like she was redirecting the spotlight. One night I was lying on the couch, and she was sitting across from me scrolling through her phone. She smiled at something on the screen, then quickly turned it over when she caught me watching. I didn't say anything, just noted it. She still kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Still curled up next to me on the couch sometimes. Still asked if I wanted anything when she went out to get coffee. But there was something different in her eyes. Not guilt, not coldness, just distance. Like I was watching someone slowly walk out of focus. Our physical intimacy faded into almost nothing. The kind of slow erosion that you don't notice until it's suddenly gone. I asked her about it once, casually, trying not to sound accusatory. She brushed it off. I've just been exhausted lately. Mentally drained. You know how it is. And I did. I knew work could take a toll. I knew life could shift people's energy around. But this didn't feel like tiredness. It felt like detachment. One night, after she said she was going to a work dinner, I sat on the edge of our bed for a long time after she left. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even anxious, really. I was just hollow. I realized I hadn't heard her laugh, not really laugh, in weeks. I couldn't remember the last time she looked at me the way she used to. Still, I pushed the thought away. Maybe we were just going through a rough patch. Maybe she needed space. Maybe I did too. But a quiet question had lodged itself in my head, and no matter how much I tried to drown it out, it just kept repeating. What if something's already changed? I didn't have an answer, and I wasn't sure I wanted one. I started waking up before my alarm. Not because I had somewhere to be, just because my mind wouldn't let me rest. There was a stretch of days where I lay there in the half-dark, listening to the quiet hum of the house, Alyssa's steady breathing beside me. I'd watch the ceiling slowly lighten with the dawn and think to myself, is this what it feels like when something slips away? Not with a scream, but with silence? Life went on, though. It always does. I went to work. She went to work. We exchanged polite updates about our days. She smiled when I made her tea in the evening and thanked me when I picked up dinner. But the warmth in those moments had thinned. It wasn't gone, not entirely, but it felt like light filtered through glass, distant, refracted, not quite reaching me like it used to. There were more changes. She started dressing differently, sharper, more styled. Nothing too out of character, but noticeable. She'd spend more time getting ready, linger longer in front of the mirror. When I mentioned how good she looked, she'd say thanks in a tone that felt formal. like I was a coworker giving her a compliment. I remember the first time that hit me, that disconnect. It was a Tuesday, and she'd just finished getting ready for a client dinner. She looked incredible, hair up, subtle makeup, a navy blouse I'd never seen before. I told her she looked beautiful, and she smiled like someone accepting an award, then checked her phone and said she had to run. I stood in the hallway after the door closed, staring at the space she just left. The routines we used to share started falling away. Friday nights became late work nights for her. Sunday mornings, she slept in longer, and when she did get up, she seemed distracted, tapping away on her phone or drifting from room to room. We still had dinner together most nights, but the conversation barely skimmed the surface. It was like eating with a memory of her rather than the woman I married. I tried to engage. I suggested a weekend getaway, just the two of us. Nothing fancy. A cabin or a coastal Airbnb. She said she'd check her schedule, then never brought it up again. When I reminded her a week later, she sighed and said, "I just don't know if I have the energy right now, Mark. Work is overwhelming." I let it go, but the truth was, I didn't believe her. Not because I thought she was lying outright, but because something was off in the way she said it. Like she wasn't even trying to convince me. There were moments, fleeting, cruel moments, where she seemed almost happy. Not with me, not exactly, but in general. A certain lightness in her step when she walked through the door. A private smile at her phone. I caught one of those smiles once, and when I asked what was funny, she just said, "Oh, nothing. Just a meme." Then she turned her phone over and changed the subject. I nodded and laughed along, but inside, that familiar, hollow weight pressed deeper. I told myself it was probably just my imagination, that people go through phases, that maybe she was under pressure and just didn't want to talk about it. But the more I tried to rationalize it, the more uneasy I felt. Not because I had any proof of anything. There were no late-night calls, no lipstick-stained collars, no suspicious receipts. But there was a change, a shift in energy and presence in the little things. And the little things, I've learned, are what give people away. Still, I said nothing. I didn't snoop. I didn't accuse. I didn't press. I just waited. Maybe for her to come back to me. Maybe for whatever this was to pass. Maybe because I wasn't ready to admit I was afraid. But I was. By the time we hit mid-April, I started keeping track of how often we touched. Not deliberately at first, it was just something I noticed. Days would pass without a single brush of her hand against mine, no shoulder bumps in the kitchen, no spontaneous hugs. Once, she walked behind me while I was doing the dishes, and I instinctively reached for her waist like I used to. She paused for half a second, then sidestepped me without saying a word. That was the moment I realized we hadn't had sex in nearly 2 months. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to frame it as some tally of unmet needs. It wasn't about that. It was about absence. There was a growing emptiness between us, and I didn't know how to close the gap without feeling like I was the only one trying. It's a strange kind of loneliness, being in the same room with someone you love and still feeling like you're on the outside of something. She was always busy. That was the new theme. Her job, her team, back-to-back meetings. And when I try to reconnect, to plan a dinner out, suggest a walk after work, even just sit together on the couch, she always seemed just a little distracted. Present, but not really with me. It was like she was living 2 lives and I only existed in one of them. One night, she came home later than usual, said she'd grabbed drinks with a coworker after a long day. Her hair was damp from the rain, her lipstick freshly reapplied, though she said she'd just come from the office. I didn't question it. I just took her coat and made a lame joke about the weather. She laughed, but it didn't sound like her. Another night, I overheard her humming while cooking, a tune I didn't recognize. She used to hum songs we both knew, or stuff we danced to in the kitchen during better years. This one felt foreign. She caught me watching her and gave me a soft smile, like I'd startled her. Then she turned away and changed the music. It wasn't dramatic, the way we were drifting apart. That's what made it so painful. There were no fights, no blowouts, no ultimatums. Just a slow, steady withdrawal. She answered my questions, but rarely asked her own. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She made conversation, but the pauses grew longer, the silences more comfortable for her than for me. I caught myself staring at her one night while she was brushing her teeth. She didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't care. I watched her like I didn't know her, like I was trying to memorize someone I couldn't quite reach anymore. The woman I married had this intensity, this joy, this spark. And the woman in front of me still looked like her, moved like her, but it felt like I was watching someone else wear her skin. Still, I kept telling myself that it was just life, that this was what long-term relationships went through, that people change, and sometimes the tide recedes before it comes back in. But in my gut, I felt it, the way you feel a storm coming even before the sky darkens. Something wasn't right, and part of me was terrified to find out what. It was a Wednesday. I remember that because I had a full slate of meetings that morning, and by some stroke of luck, or irony, 2 of them got canceled back to back. My boss told me to take the rest of the day if I wanted, said I'd earned a break. Normally, I would have brushed it off, stayed and finished some reports. But something in me, it felt almost like instinct, told me to go home. I didn't call or text Alyssa to let her know. I figured she'd still be at work or on a call or whatever she was always doing these days. I stopped for a coffee on the way back, took the long route through the park, let the cool breeze blow the weight off my shoulders for a moment. I told myself I was going home to nap, or maybe finally tackle the mess in the garage. But I wasn't ready for what I was about to walk into. The second I opened the front door, something felt wrong. Not loud or obvious, just off. The house was too quiet, but there were faint sounds, music, low voices coming from upstairs. Her car was in the driveway, but she hadn't mentioned being off today. That was the first thing that stood out. I remember walking slowly, like my brain needed time to catch up to my body. I paused at the bottom of the stairs. I could hear laughter. Hers. And someone else's. A man's voice. Casual, unguarded. Familiar in a way I didn't want it to be. For one brief moment, I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was a Zoom call. Maybe a friend stopped by. Maybe. I don't know what I expected when I opened the bedroom door. Maybe I thought they'd be fully clothed, talking. Maybe it would still be deniable. But the scene that greeted me shattered whatever hope I had left. There they were, in our bed, sheets tangled, her back arched, his hand on her hip. And for a second, just a second, they didn't even see me. They were so wrapped up in each other that the world outside that bed didn't exist. And then Alyssa saw me. She froze. Her eyes locked with mine, wide and stunned, like I was a ghost. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The man, some guy I didn't recognize, turned, still half naked, and had the gall to look annoyed, like I was the one intruding. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just stood there, staring, heart pounding so hard I could barely hear anything over the roar in my ears. Alyssa scrambled to cover herself, stammering something, my name, I think, but I was already walking away. Down the stairs, out the front door, my hands trembling so hard I dropped my keys trying to unlock the car. I sat behind the wheel for what felt like an hour. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, numb, staring at the dashboard while everything I thought I knew about my life burned quietly behind me. I didn't need an explanation. I didn't want one. Whatever excuses she had, whatever mental gymnastics she prepared to justify it, none of it mattered anymore. The doubt, the quiet distance, the subtle changes, they all made sense now. And just like that, the life I thought we were building shattered in an instant. Everything after that came in waves. But in that moment, sitting in the car with her silhouette still moving in the upstairs window, one thought played on a loop in my mind. She chose this. When I finally walked back into the house, the silence hit me like a brick wall. The music was off. The laughter, gone. Alyssa was sitting on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a blanket like a child who got caught sneaking out past curfew. The man, her lover, was standing by the window, fully dressed now, trying hard to look anywhere but at me. I didn't yell. I didn't lunge. I didn't even ask why. I just looked at him and said, "Get out." He opened his mouth like he might protest, maybe even throw some smug line my way, but he thought better of it. Without a word, he grabbed his shoes and walked past me, keeping his eyes fixed on the ground. I followed him down the stairs, out the door, and watched him walk off into the late afternoon sunlight like a bad dream fading at dawn. Then I locked the door behind him. I turned back to Alyssa, who was still upstairs. She hadn't moved. Her face was pale, tear-streaked, her hands clutching the blanket like it might shield her from what came next. "I want you out," I said, my voice flat. "Pack your things. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Mark, please, just wait," she started, standing slowly, reaching out like that gesture could rewind everything. "We need to talk. I made a mistake." "No," I interrupted. "You made a choice. And now I'm making mine." She didn't argue after that. Maybe it was the tone of my voice. Maybe it was the reality finally settling into her chest. She moved slowly, methodically, pulling clothes from drawers, grabbing her essentials. I didn't watch her. I went into the kitchen, called a locksmith, and booked the earliest appointment they had. I stood by the front door, arms crossed, waiting. She came down with a suitcase and a duffel bag slung over her shoulder. I didn't offer to help. She looked at me one last time before stepping outside, eyes glassy, lips trembling. "Can I call you later?" she whispered. I didn't answer. I just shut the door. The locksmith arrived 20 minutes later. As he worked, I sat on the living room couch, staring at the blank television screen, hearing the click of new tumblers being set into place. Each one felt like a brick sealing off a chapter of my life. When he left, I walked through the house in silence. I opened the windows, let the air move, burned a candle in the bedroom, stripped the bed, threw the sheets into the washing machine on the hottest setting. Then I called my lawyer. We had a prenup. The house was mine before we married. The car's title was in my name. Our finances were easily split. The lawyer walked me through what came next. File for divorce, include the infidelity, file for damages where I could. I didn't want to drag this out. I just wanted her gone for good, with nothing left to tie her to my life. And that's exactly what I set out to do. She called, of course. She texted, emailed, left voicemails with that broken, breathless voice of someone trying to sound devastated. I didn't listen. I didn't respond. I blocked her number and sent everything else to spam. Whatever she thought we still had, she destroyed it the moment she brought another man into our home. Our bed. I filed the next morning. By the end of the week, she'd been served. She tried to plead, of course, through mutual friends, through her sister, even through my own family. But I didn't budge. My lawyer was aggressive, and with the evidence I had, it wasn't hard to make sure she walked away with nothing but her suitcase and her guilt. There's a strange clarity that comes with betrayal. The pain is blinding at first, yes, but underneath it is a sharpness, a focus. You suddenly see exactly what needs to be done. And I did it. That house, the one that used to feel warm and shared, was mine again. And for the first time in a long time, I locked the door at night and felt a sliver of peace. I'd lost the woman I thought I knew, but I wasn't about to lose myself too. It took a while for the silence to feel like peace again. At first, it was just quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears and reminds you of what used to fill the space. No footsteps on the stairs. No music drifting from the bathroom while she got ready. No clinking of her tea mug on the countertop. Just the low hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of floorboards, like the house itself was trying to adjust to her absence. But over time, that quiet started to change. It stopped feeling like absence. It started feeling like possibility. I cleared out the remnants of our life together. Every photo, every gift, every trace of her. I boxed it all up and stored it in the garage, then walked back into a house that finally felt like mine. I rearranged the furniture, painted the guest room, bought new sheets, new mugs, a new rug for the living room. It wasn't about material things. It was about rewriting the story of the space, reclaiming it. And then, slowly, I started to reclaim myself. I went back to the gym, not to punish myself or to prove anything, but because it felt good to sweat, to feel my body work, to remember that I was still here. I reconnected with old friends, guys I drifted from because I was always busy, always focused on being a good husband. I met up with them for dinner, for drinks, even joined a hiking group one of them was part of. It felt strange at first, being out in the world again, but it also felt right. Like I'd been underwater and was finally taking full breaths again. Then came the moment I didn't expect. Her name was Claire. We met at a friend's birthday dinner, one I almost skipped because I still wasn't sure I was ready to socialize in that way. But I went. She sat across from me at the restaurant, warm and open, with a calm energy that felt nothing like what I'd known before. She wasn't flashy. She didn't dominate the room. She listened. She asked thoughtful questions. She smiled like she meant it. We didn't talk about past relationships. Not at first. We talked about books, food, the kind of music we liked on rainy days. We shared dessert and laughed over a mutual dislike of sparkling water. She told me she worked as a therapist, and I joked that she was probably analyzing me already. She said, "Maybe. But you seem like someone who's trying to start over." That's a good thing. We didn't rush anything. I wasn't looking for a replacement, and she wasn't trying to be one. What grew between us was slow, steady, intentional. The kind of connection that makes you feel safe, not restless. One Saturday, a few months after we met, we went hiking. It was a quiet trail, the kind where you can hear your own thoughts but don't need to fill the silence. At one point, we reached a clearing with a view of the valley below, and I just stopped. I looked at her, looked at the sky, and felt this strange, almost surreal sense of gratitude. Gratitude. Not for what happened. Not for the betrayal, the pain, the chaos of it all. But for having come through it. For surviving it. For standing on the other side of it with my feet on solid ground. Claire turned to me and said, "You look like you're somewhere else." I shook my head and smiled. "No. I'm exactly where I want to be." And for the first time in a long, long while, I meant it. It's been over a year now since everything fell apart, since I came home to a version of my life I didn't recognize, since I watched the person I trusted most betray everything we'd built. But strangely, I don't think about that day as often anymore. It's still there, etched in memory, like a scar you can trace with your fingers. But the sting has dulled. The wound has healed, even if the mark remains. I sometimes catch myself wondering if she ever thinks about it, about what she lost, what she gave up for a few months of adrenaline and secrets. I wonder if she regrets it. If she looks back on that version of us and sees it with the same clarity I do now. Not with longing, but with recognition. I don't miss her. I miss who I thought she was. But that version of her, of us, was already fading long before that bedroom door opened. After the divorce was finalized, she tried once more to reach out, sent a letter, actually. A handwritten note delivered to my mailbox, no return address. I read it once. Apologies, explanations, half-truths painted as revelations. It didn't make me angry. It didn't make me sad. It just confirmed what I already knew. She was still writing a version of our story that only existed in her mind. I threw it out. Claire and I are still together. We've built something real, something steady and kind. It's not perfect. We both carry our histories like quiet companions. But the difference is, we talk. We listen. We don't walk around each other on eggshells. And in a way, that honesty feels more intimate than anything I ever had before. I've also started journaling, something I never did until all of this. It helps, more than I expected. Getting the thoughts out of my head, seeing them on paper, turning chaos into something I can actually sit with. It's how this story came to be, really. Just me, late at night, writing to strangers on the internet, trying to make sense of a life that unraveled in front of me. To anyone reading this who might be where I was, confused, hurt, hollow, I want to say something that took me too long to believe. This isn't the end. It feels like it, I know. It feels like everything good has been taken from you. But what's actually been taken is the illusion. And once that's gone, you can start building something real. You don't owe your loyalty to someone who treated it like a burden. You don't owe your love to someone who weaponized it against you. What you do owe yourself is grace. Time. Space to heal. The courage to feel everything without letting it consume you. I thought I lost everything. But now I see it differently. What I lost was a lie. And what I've gained is myself.